Welcome back to another episode of the S.E.M podcast. Jack Bryce here again with Zach Hewlett. And tonight we're joined by Garrett Smith. How you doing, Garrett?
I'm doing very well. How are you guys?
Doing good.
We are excellent. Thank you.
Good.
Yeah, where are you calling from tonight?
I live in Montgomery, Texas. So it's north of Houston, like 60 miles.
Okay.
Nice.
So I moved down here about a year ago, a little over a year ago. So,
Right.
Sweet.
yep.
Well, start us off with how you ended up on a mission in Scotland. And then we'll skip over and talk about what you've been up to since getting home. And then we'll go back and reminisce for a little bit.
All right. Sounds good. So pre-mission, mission was really never something on my radar growing up. Grew up a member of the church, went every week. But mission wasn't something I planned on doing. Had some really good leaders, young men's leaders and stuff. Elder Streeter, I don't know his first name.
Spencer.
But Spencer. His uncle was my young men's leader. Like I grew up around him. I knew him my whole life. So
Wow.
yeah, it's a crazy small world that you would end up there. And I remember talking to him briefly about it. He wasn't there very long while I was there. But it just was never something I was planning on doing. I don't think my parents expected me. I kind of made it clear as I got older that really wasn't something I was interested in. So after high school, I moved out and I started working, doing power line construction. Got a job working with my brother. He helped me do that and was out there working, making good money and living away from home, and just life wasn't jiving the way it should have been. I started contemplating, like, what am I doing? Where am I headed? What do I want to do? It's like, I didn't know. I think I did a semester of school at Idaho State that winter, and I think my GPA was like less than a 2.0. It was not good. I was like, I need to figure some stuff out. So I started really contemplating like what I wanted to do. I didn't know what I wanted to do for a career. I was 18. I was like, I'm not ready or mature enough to get married. I was like, maybe I ought to start going back to church and start figuring stuff out. So started doing that and started going to church and going back to church again. Started meeting with my bishop and working through things. And it took me, from start to finish to the time I got my call, probably 9 months to a year by the time I went through all repentance process and got my papers in. And I actually didn't even tell my parents I was putting in my papers. I was just kind of doing this behind my back. My whole big scheme was I was just going to show up with my mission call and be like, hey, this came in the mail. But I was at church one day and just someone in the ward came up to me and I told some friends, he's like, my parents were there. He's like, hey, I heard you're working on putting in your mission papers. I was like, yeah, I am. And my mom and dad are sitting there and they're like, they had heard, but I hadn't told them. So they were playing coy with it. And they're like, we had kind of heard, but he hadn't told us. And but the guy was like, oh, I'm real sorry. I was like, that's all right. And they already knew. I was like, yeah, I put in my papers. So I remember I got a phone call and I'm wanting to say it was June or July. I was working with my uncle wiring houses in Twin Falls, and my parents called me like, hey, your call showed up. It was pretty early in the morning. Do you want us to come and meet you? It's like, yeah. So they brought my call to Twin Falls and we went out to lunch. And
All right, Garrett, take your time.
yeah, I'm softy. So I get this call and it's like Scotland, Edinburgh Mission. And I remember I had got my patriarchal blessing earlier that summer. And it said I would be called to a place where the harvest was ripe. And I would uh, thrust in my sickle with my might and realize a bountiful harvest of souls. And so getting that, I was like under the assumption, I was like, oh, I'll be going to like Mexico or South America. I was like, I had a lot of friends that had gone Spanish speaking missions and I wanted to go. I wanted to learn a new language, and Scotland came up and it was completely out of nowhere. It wasn't even on my radar, and I was just super excited to go. And so yeah, that was pre-mission leading up to mission. And then I think I left. I think I got my call in July or August, and then I reported to the MTC in October, end of October, if I remember right. So
2005.
Yeah, 2005, correct. Yep. Yeah, and we'll jump over in post mission. I got home in October, so I'd applied to school. I think I got accepted to BYU Idaho, but I got home in October. So I remember getting a job with just a guy in the community, driving tractor for a little while, and worked there till winter semester started. And I would go to school, and I would do a semester of school till I ran out of money, and then I would go and work for a summer or so and make enough money to go back to school. My major changed every semester. I think I did one in wildlife and fisheries management. I wanted to be a game warden, then I realized that I wasn't going to be a game warden. I did one in electrical engineering because I'd been doing power line construction. I thought it'd be cool to know the engineering side of it. Big, pretty good gig. That lasted like 2 weeks, and I dropped almost all my classes, and I had a season pass up to Targhee to go snowboarding. So that's what that semester consisted of. I did a semester of residential construction. I thought that would be a pretty good gig, and really the only thing it taught me is that college was not for me. And so that last semester up at school, I ended up meeting my wife. We met at a bonfire in Rexburg, and I remember the story because my roommates, I was like, I don't even want to go. And one of my roommate's friends came over and he said, but there's going to be freshmen at this party, at this bonfire. It's like, all right, I'll go. And so I ended up meeting her there, and typical Mormon story, like 3 months later, we were married, and we've been together now. It'll be 13 years in July. We've got 2 little girls, Scarlett and Sophie. They're 3 and 4. Just life happens, and things have been really good. I mean, family's amazing. The kids are busy. I'm sure you guys have had young kids or have young kids. It's just hectic all the time. I ended up going through and doing an apprenticeship for power line construction. I'm a journeyman lineman, and kind of traveled everywhere doing work. I've worked in I don't even know, Texas, Louisiana, Arkansas, California, Kansas, Idaho, Wyoming, Utah, Washington State. We settled in Wyoming for about 8 years. That was been our most stable place. And then, like I said, we moved down here about 1.5 years ago, and kind of just been down here. And I actually found out, listening to the podcast, that John O'Brien lives about an hour south of me. He lives right in Houston. I've touched base with him, and work schedules haven't lined up quite yet. I work 11 days on, 3 days off, and it's a kind of a swing shift. It's crazy hours. So, but we'll be getting together with him hopefully sometime soon and reminiscing again. I've seen him once or twice post mission, so it'll be nice to see him again.
That's awesome. Love it.
Yeah.
That's great. All right. Well, take us back. You start the MTC, Scotland, wherever you want, and we'll kind of walk through companions, areas, and any stories you want to talk about.
All right. Yeah. So MTC, went to the Preston England MTC like everybody else did. Well, most everybody else. Remember my parents taking me to the airport, and we're sitting at security, and I've been through and everything. And it's like, well, started to think about it and started to get a little teary and scared. And I was like, I just got to say goodbye. So I remember just giving my parents, just like it happened quick within like 3 minutes of me getting through security. I had said my goodbyes and I had turned my back and walked off. And I remember my mom just kind of standing there with a look of shock on her face, like she wasn't ready for me to go. I was like, if I don't go, it's going to be a disaster for me. So I just left. So I left, and I remember seeing, I think Elder Calhoun was there and Elder King at the airport, and we just kind of sat and chatted, and we got to Preston, and I was super overwhelmed and underprepared I went most of my young adult life doing nothing to prepare for a mission, and I get there and there's these kids that they've looked forward to this their whole life, and I am like, they're here, and I just felt like I was. Yeah, I just felt like I was at the bottom. And so I felt like I really needed to work hard. And I remember Elder Peacock came to me when I was there. I had broke down in front of everybody, embarrassing. You're a 20-year-old guy, and I went a little bit later, so I was a little bit older. And just put his hand around my shoulder. It was what I needed. Like, he won't know what that did for me, but it meant that meant a lot. And in Wyoming, actually, was in a ward with his sister. And come to find out that his sister lived in the same ward, and actually got to see him a couple times too. Actually, I think just once, but he was just super cool and really kind to me, and I always look forward to seeing him in the mission. And I never served with him or around him. I think I only saw him at zone conferences. But that's kind of the most that I remember about the MTC. Is it was an eye opener for me, and it really set the tone for the first few months of my mission. Like, I really struggled. And my first companion was Elder Ben Buckner, and it was his last week, his last transfer going home, and he was training me, and we got sent to Dalkeith, which is just south of the mission home. And he was a great dude. I think I read through my journal a little bit, and I kind of stopped writing in that thing, because every time I'd write in, I'd find it felt like I was just complaining about people. It was more of a place for me to go to gripe. And you figure I thought he was super trunky and didn't even want, but we worked so hard. Like, I would get letters and just start to cry. Like, we'd cut companion studies short so we could go knock doors. We'd skip lunches, we'd skip dinners, just so we could knock doors, because that was the only time where I wasn't thinking about home. And he did that for me. I mean, I'm sure he was exhausted. You could see it in his face. He had worked hard his whole mission, and here I am, full of energy, ready to go 110, and he was just dragging me along. And he was a stellar missionary. That guy was awesome. And I was with him for 6 weeks, and then I stayed in Dalkeith, and I was with Elder Jason Canucci he was from Wells, and he was complete opposite of me. I mean, I grew up in a small farming community. My parents owned a mink ranch. Like, I was out shooting guns, and he was very, like, proper. And he was a great missionary. And I don't remember not getting along with him. We were just completely different. And it was just, I'd never been around, I grew up around country boys, and Jason was not a country boy at all. A great missionary, and we found out some things about the ward there that previous missionaries that kind of went knocking on doors and told them that members of the ward had sent them there when they hadn't, or that's the story we got, so that the members really didn't trust us. Yeah. And we didn't find that out. And so it's like, I don't remember getting many dinner appointments with members, or we just knocked doors. That's all we did there. After Dalkeith, I got sent to work to serve with Elder Devin Fisher, M&M Fisher, in Kirkcaldy. And he was a breath of fresh air. Like, similar. He was fun to be around. The work was probably about the same. A lot of knocking doors, not many appointments. I remember Elder Pattenden and Dan Maddox, I think was his name. I think Stewart trained him. Mm-hmm. But I remember we got together with them on P days, and we hung out with them a lot. And I had just a couple. We would play pint Jenga in our flat with Kool-Aid.
Oh no!
And we played one day, and I lost a lot, and I drank a lot of Kool-Aid really quick. Like, it was bad. Like I started having kidney pains, and I started to lose control of my bladder as the mission progressed. Like it actually, I don't know if this is what caused. I take overactive bladder medicine now because I have an overactive bladder, and I feel like it stemmed from pint Jenga in Kirkcaldy.
Gosh.
And it was just like, I remember going to doctors because we'd just be standing at a bus stop, and I'd be like, I can't hold this. I've got to go. And I would be peeing behind bus stops, or I may have even wet my pants once or twice because I couldn't get to a bathroom in time. And it was just like out of control. It was crazy.
Oh man.
And I remember writing home to my parents about this, and then I just kind of stopped telling them about it. I was like, I'm going to doctors. And I remember them asking, like, what is going on? Are you okay? And I was like, yeah, I just ignore it. But yeah, I was fine. It was just crazy stuff went on with them. But we worked hard there. Like Fisher that guy was just fun to be with. He was a good guy. He was really good. Pattendon was fun. Maddox was good to be around. I think I was there. I have my list out. I think I was only in Kirkcaldy. So I think I was there with Fisher for 3 months. I was in Dalkeith for 3 months, and then Fisher for 3 months in Kirkcaldy, and then I went to Inverness with Elder Mike Borgelthos, and he just left. I think John O'Brien had just left Mike and went to the mission home, if I remember right. And he's super good elder. They had found some people up there, a young man by the name of Michael Coots that I'm pretty sure he was already scheduled for baptism when I got there. I was able to see the baptism, which for me, that 6 months was like the first time we'd ever had a solid person come to church, like any kind of progression, like the only remnant of a successful mission that I'd seen thus far. And it was pretty cool to see and kind of help get that fire and be like, man, people can teach and baptize in Scotland. It's not a myth. Refer back to my patriarchal blessing. I'm thinking, man, I don't know what's going on with this thing because it is not ready. There's not much going on here. And so I was there for 6 weeks, and I remember Elder Jonathan DePole came on the podcast, and he talked about that day we spent in Inverness. And I remember that day, and that was something special. And, that was the Lord just reaching out to him. I just happened to be able to observe that and witness it, and it was cool. And he's another missionary that guy. He'll have a special spot in my heart forever. And I got to see him once or twice, too. I was working in San Antonio, and I met up with him one night when he was stationed there and got to reminisce with him. This has probably been 10 years ago or so. But yeah, wow. Just a great guy. Sister Lion and Sister Siegmiller were up there with us. And and Sister Siegmiller, she's since passed. I was able to see her and Sister Lion after my mission as well. I was pretty blessed as far as that go. I've been able to be in touch and keep in touch with a lot of people and see a few people, and they were one of them. But they would leave us keys to their apartment. We'd give them some money, and they would buy groceries and leave us food, and we would go there and eat. They were just amazing, amazing sisters. I love them with all my heart.
They were great.
Yeah, they really were. I was only in Inverness for 6 weeks, and then I got shipped down to the mission home to serve with Elder O'Brien. And Elder O'Brien, and everyone they say great things about him. It's true. He is, and he is smart. He is very smart, and he had things figured out in the mission home where he could get his stuff done. He was over, I don't remember what he was over in the mission home. I cannot remember. I know I took care of like the mail, mission supplies, phones, and vehicles. And then he did maybe the flats and that kind of stuff. I don't remember. And so he would schedule his stuff, and he could get it done a lot faster than I could get my stuff done. So I'm a little slower. And he'd schedule our appointments, and I can remember I'd get frustrated because I couldn't get all my stuff done. But we're going to teach. It's like, well, let's go get this done then. And we were teaching a lot of people. We were busy, and we shared the mission home with, obviously, you had a senior couple that worked in the office under there. The president and mission president and his wife lived there, and then the assistants were in the mission home as well. And we actually had adjoining rooms with the assistants, and sometimes that was just rowdy. Sometimes it was. I've got pictures. I don't know if Elder O'Brien appreciates it, but it was Elder DePold and I think Elder Hout, and we pinned him down. And I don't know if you guys, when you sent your letters or you got your letters and sent them home, they had a big airmail stamp on them. Well, I had that. I had that stamp in the mission home, and we stamped his legs. We stamped his forehead with that. We had a lot of fun. We had a lot of fun there, and there was a lot of wrestling that went on. We actually broke my bed at the mission home, and it was right after President and Sister Vreens had left, and the Fredworks were there. And I remember going downstairs. I was like, I need a new bed. Sister Frederick's like, why do you need a new bed? I was like, wow. And I proceeded to tell her what had happened, and it was like you could just see the look of disapproval on her face, and and I think they let me sleep. I slept on the floor on a mattress for probably like 3 or 4 weeks.
Because just the frame had broke?
Oh yeah, it shattered that frame. It was a wooden frame bed.
Oh,
and
man.
I think Elder O'Brien walked into the room, and DePaul came through and just like speared him onto the bed, picked his feet up off of it. It just broke the bed. And we just laughed. And then after it was kind of cracked, I finished it off. I just jumped on it a couple of times. I was like, well, this thing's toast. I may as well get a couple cracks at it. But yeah,
the likelihood, Garrett, is you were not the first person that jumped on that bed. You were just the last.
No. We were just the last. That is absolutely right. That is 100% true. Yeah.
Oh man, that's funny.
I have some great memories from the mission home, from teaching. I have an experience where John and I were out proselyting one day, and we just gotten off a bus, and I had a prompting to stop and go turn around and speak to somebody. And I don't remember who it was. Anyways, I got nervous. I didn't follow that prompting. And John was on the other side of the street. He crossed the street, came up and talked to those people that I was supposed to talk to, and was able to get appointments with them. And it's just that taught me something as a missionary. It's like I need to follow those promptings, and that maybe in the future there's not always going to be a John O'Brien to cover your back or to get your back on stuff like that. I got to see a ton of missionaries coming in and out of the mission home. Edinburgh always had, I'm wanting to say it was like 5 or 6 sets of missionaries in Edinburgh. And so you got to associate with all those people. The sisters that were there, Sister Jagger and Sister Hogg and Sister Garnham, Elder McBride, like just being able to be around those people was great. You got to see them all the time. I remember before President Vreens left, I felt like everybody loved President Vreens. He was just such a great guy. But I remember I would go down to his office at like sometimes 9:30 or 10 o'clock at night, and we would just sit there and chat. And it was special, like just very tender moments where he would just, he genuinely cared about everybody, and he always had time for everybody. And I don't know how many times that happened. It happened a lot. I would end up down there in his office just sitting there chatting with him. And I was fortunate enough for them. They came home. They came to my report when I got home, and then they were in the temple when I got sealed with me as well, which was really special. We were sealed in the Salt Lake temple, and they live in Salt Lake. And I mean, Salt Lake, it's a 2.5 hour drive from my house. But yeah, they were able to be there for my report and my sealing. I haven't been in touch with them as much. I went and stayed with them probably 2 or 3 times. And when I was living in Montana, his sister was actually lived in the ward that I was living in as well. So I got to meet her as well, and I know he's dealing with some ailments right now, and it just breaks your heart. But that guy was stellar. That guy, yeah. He's the only reason probably I stayed on my mission. He helped keep me there. That and the disappointment I felt like I'd disappoint people if I showed up back home. It's like too prideful for that, so I'll just stick it out. But things got better and I started to enjoy it. And
then the amazing thing about this podcast too, Garrett, is we've learned how President Reen's philosophy was to keep us there. You know,
yes.
Irregardless of all the stupid stuff that many of us did, he wanted us to be there and to see out the opportunity to be missionaries in the Scotland Edinburgh Mission, and that was a true testament to him.
Yeah, it was. He was good. Yeah, he was. Yeah. And then I was in the mission home for like 4 months, and it was like, I don't remember if it was right after President Vrains had left home, but I got part of an emergency transfer out of the mission home. And I can't remember who it was, but a missionary, I'm wanting to say, broke his ankle or something. And so they brought him into the mission home, and I went out, and they sent me to, looking here, I think it was Coatbridge and Airdrie with Dexter Snyder. I don't know if you guys knew Dexter or not.
Mm-hmm.
He's a big kid. He was tall. He always had a smile on his face, just happy to be there, happy to work. Really, I was only with him for one transfer, and I was looking through my notes, and yeah, it wasn't even full transfer. It was just for a month that I served with him. But yeah, I really enjoyed my time serving with him. I don't think there was any. I don't think we didn't get along. I remember he just always had a huge smile, and he was just, people liked being around him, and when he taught, he was always so serious about his conviction with the gospel and his testimony. It was just fun to be with him. And then from there, what's that?
I said agreed. That's perfect description of Dexter. I love it.
Yeah, and then from there I went to Iowa with Jonathan Shenton, and I served with him for 6 weeks, and he was good. I really enjoyed my time serving with Elder Shenton. It was, the American-British clash type stuff. It was just fun banter back and forth all the time. But I think I've gotten my notes, we saw a baptism there, a lady by the name of Linda Queen. I can remember, I've got a picture somewhere of her and I and Jonathan on the day she got baptized. And I enjoyed my time serving with him. And I think I was in Iowa. I was looking, I didn't realize it, but I think I was in Iowa for like 6 months.
Wow.
And that was my longest serving area. And I don't have a ton of, it's been 15 years, so my memories of that, I feel like, should be more in tune with what it was, but it's not. After Shenton, I was only with him for 6 weeks. Demer and Ashton, I came and served with him. Yeah. He came there and served with me for 6 weeks. And we were on very similar backgrounds. I think he grew up on a farm as well. I got along really well with him. He was fun to be with. I'm pretty sure he was trained by Elder Jansen, and I got him second. And I really enjoyed my time with him. And then I got Tyler Webb, and I think I trained Tyler in Iowa. And we had a lot of fun. I think I really enjoyed my time with him. He was just so relaxed and chill. I think we came from similar backgrounds a little bit, but we clicked really well. And he was just laid back. He just kind of went with the flow. We worked hard. We had a lady there, and I didn't know this at the time as a missionary, but we had scheduled her for baptism, and she was progressing through the lessons and doing really well. But uh, come to find out, she was like a compulsive liar, and she had convinced one of the members of the ward to come and work for her and got him to like quit his job, and there was no job for him to go to. It
Oh
got
my.
it was crazy. I remember talking to President about it, and I think he knew what was going on before any of us did. It was President Frederick, and I remember sitting. I want to say I was in the mission home. We were sitting in his office talking about it, or maybe it was just at a zone conference or something. But he's like telling him what's going on. I was like, I don't know what to do. I can't figure this out. And he just looked at me and he said, I've heard missionaries have, how did he phrase it? It's to the effect that missionaries have better answers than mission presidents. It was like his way of telling me that I needed to figure it out. And it bamboozled me for a while, but we finally caught wind of it that like everything she was telling us really wasn't true, and we ended up just having to drop her. And I think I was a district leader there, and I had an experience there with I don't remember their name. They were a senior couple, and they'd scheduled somebody for baptism, and I went down to do the baptismal interview. And as I'm sitting there in this interview, asking the questions, and I think there were three questions that if they answered the wrong answer to, they had to be interviewed by the mission president. And one of those questions came up, and he's like, "Yeah, I've been involved in something like this." And I was like, completely taken off guard by. I was like, "How did this?" So I was like, I just stopped the interview right there. I'm sure it was nerve wracking for the guy. I don't remember his name. And I stepped out and I called President Frederick. I was like, "Hey, this is what's going on." And President told me, he's like, "I can't get down there." He's like, "You're just going to have to do this interview." And I was like, "Oh my goodness." And so I walked back in, and as far as like a personal manifestation of the Spirit in regards to somebody else, I've never experienced anything like that before, where there was no doubt that that man had been forgiven of his sins. And it was a very special moment for me and for him, obviously. But I think I probably took more from it. Maybe not, though. You don't know. But it was just something that I'd never experienced before. As far as like, except for in my own life, I had experienced something similar when I was going through that repentance process where I felt that remission. But I had never vicariously felt that for somebody else, except for in that instance where I knew that I was an instrument. And that gentleman, I'm assuming he was later baptized, and don't know where he's at now or what's going on, but that was probably one of the highlights as far as like being able to experience that. That's something I've always remembered. Yeah, it was pretty cool. Looking through my notes, I've got some. I feel bad not mentioning members as much in this. I don't remember a ton, but Iowa, there were. Did either of you ever serve in that area?
No.
No. There was the Beveridge family, the Frasers. There was a gentleman by the name of Alan Smith. I was able to develop really good relationships with these people, and it was just always. It was hard to leave that area. And then I know Glasgow gets a bad rap and everybody, but that was where I was sent to next. I got sent to Springboyd, and I was nervous because I just, previous to when I got there, that was when the two missionaries got jumped by the group of Neds and ended up in the hospital with staples and stitches.
Yeah.
And I think that was Elder Black and Elder Andrew Harrison, English Harrison.
Hmm.
And so I got to Springboig, and this is the area that my patriarchal blessing was talking about. I was transferred into a gold mine. There were some people there that they'd been teaching that, and I don't know the circumstances or what it was before. Uh, I I feel like I worked really hard as a missionary just because I felt like it was a privilege that I was able to serve given my circumstances before and my lack of preparedness. And so when I got there, I remember, I don't know if it was the first day, but we went to see a part member family. And I remember walking out of there and telling Elder Harrison, I was like, they had a kid, his name was Callum. I was like, he's going to be baptized. And Elder Harrison just kind of looked at me and laughed. He's like, no, he's not. And I don't know, they were great, but I served with him for 6 weeks, but the people in that area, they were just ready. And I was able to go in there and give the commitments and help facilitate the Spirit in a way that we were able to start to really see them progress. And we started to baptize people in that area, and they were referring their friends. And so we'd go to a baptism, and they'd have 2 or 3 friends there, and they would bring their friends, and their daughters were bringing their friends, and then we'd go meet them and meet their parents, and we were able to talk to their parents and start teaching some of their parents and stuff. And it just exploded into an area where the work was, I went from my daily planner, the only real things I had planned in it were lunch and dinner and member appointments, to where sometimes we had to skip lunch and dinner just so we could go teach. And I remember I was talking to Elder Lucas about, he says hi, by the way. I was messaging him earlier today. I got a funny story to tell you about Elder Lucas when he came to visit me in America. It's been quite a few years ago. Don't let me forget.
Okay.
But I was talking to him about this today, but I don't know who I was with, but I'm pretty sure neither of us had driver's licenses. But we were so busy, we convinced, I don't remember if it was the assistants or the zone leaders, to give us a car or keep us with the car. So we drove around for like 6 weeks with no licenses because we were so busy, because we couldn't keep up. If I didn't have a car, I was like, I'm not going to be able to get to all these appointments. The area is too spread out. And it was crazy. I served with Elder Harrison there, English Harrison. I trained Elder Jordan Postak in that area.
Yeah.
And I remember serving with him. He was a great kid. He was, I think he struggled a little bit with, he did struggle a little bit with confidence when he came out on his mission. He was a little bit timid and shy, but man, I would have loved to come in as a missionary into an area like that, because he was able to get in and just start teaching all the time. And it was just like, you could just see the growth in him as well, being able to teach and go to appointments and stuff. And I think I only served with him for 6 weeks as well. And then I served with Elder David Vance Harrison. And I got along really well with him too. And he'd come in, and I remember we were talking one night. It must have been fairly close, maybe a week or so after he got there, but he was just like, he was able to catch the vision of what a mission could be under the right circumstances of being able to go. Because I think, and not everybody was able to experience being able to teach a ton. It's just how the cards were. You guys know, I spent the first 18 months of my mission hardly teaching at all. I just got lucky enough to fall into an area where people were ready. It's nothing that I did. They were just prepared. And man, I loved being there. But things started to get a little bit weird. And there's some stuff that started happening with some members. And I was told my wife about this, but there was a couple women in the ward that started to, I don't even, they started to wanted to be more social with me. And I remember one day, and I was talking to Elder Lucas about this as well, and I don't remember who it was, but I don't know if it was zone leaders or the assistants showed up at the apartment, and they're like, Elder Smith, we need to talk to you. It's like, oh man, what have I done now? It's like, you're not surprised by it. It's like, I like to, I have fun. But they're like, so there's been a situation. Somebody's went to the bishop of the ward and is accusing you of being involved in some relations with a female member of the ward. And I'm just like, what?
Oh my gosh.
And then they start telling me about it. I was like, no, there's no way. No way at all. I haven't done anything. Anyways, come to find out, she was a member of the ward. She had a daughter. We went over there probably once a week for dinner appointments, just teaching lessons. She's kind of active, kind of not. But her ex-husband had went to the bishop of the Springborg ward and told him that her and I were having relations.
Oh man.
Holy cow.
Yeah. And so that made it, I don't know if it went to the mission president. I'm assuming it trickled from the top back down. And this started happening, like this happened. And then there was another lady, it was Callum's mom. She was single as well. She had three kids, and we spent a lot of time over there. I think we baptized. I'll look real quick. Yeah, we ended up baptizing all three of her kids. And so they were aged, I think Callum was maybe 10 or 12. Lauren was, no, it wasn't Lauren, Kenzie. I can't remember. They were from like 10 and 12 up to 16. So we were there a lot. This how it happened over. Anyways, she started to say stuff at appointments. Like she told us one day, we were getting ready to leave. She's like, Elder Smith, she's like, when you get home from your mission, she's like, I'm coming to America. I'm going to snog your face off. And I was like, thanks for waiting to tell me that. Tell I'm going to be in America. But, we just keep it at that. And I was like, I didn't even know what to say. So I think I just turned around and left. I don't even think we left with a prayer. I just left. I was like, I don't even know what to do here. And so, I had spent 4.5 months there, and with things going the way they were I developed really personal relationships with these people because I genuinely care about them and I loved them with all my heart. And it was misconstrued through me somehow, unfortunately, that it was never intended to be more than that, and it never was anything more than that. But the missionary, I think it was the assistants, asked, like, it was my last 6 weeks I'd spent there. They're like, what do you want to do? They're like, if you want to stay here, you can stay here. I was like, man, there's so much stuff going on here. I need to leave. It's like, it's affecting the area. It's like the work is starting to slow down a little bit. I think I need to be changed out of there. And so I was transferred to Knightswood with Elder Van Leuven.
Yeah.
And he was a little bit rowdy and just full throttle with everything. I remember we were driving to an appointment one day, and I wasn't paying attention. I was looking I can't remember what I was doing, looking over my white handbook for calendar appointments and stuff. And he just looks at me and he's like, hey, take your badge off and put it in your pocket. I was like, what is going on? And we're driving, and then we pull over, and this guy comes up to our window and just starts screaming at us. And I'm like, what is going on? And Elder Van Leeuwen's like, yeah, it was a learner in the car and he'd cut her off. And it was like her dad or something that was with her, the instructor. And he came up, and this guy thought he was going to punch us. I was like, oh my goodness. So we're sitting there in this car hiding our badges so we can't see we're members of the church. we go. But I only served with him for 2 weeks. And then they got a phone call and they put me in the Glasgow zone leader spot with Elder Lucas and why did I just forget his name? Elder Johnson.
Oh yeah.
And then I finished out there, and I read through my journal a little bit there. And I know Christian's been referenced and calling people uncultured before, and I was guilty of being called that as well. He's like, "What do you want to do today, Elder?" I was like, "I don't know." He's like, "You want to go to the museum?" I was like, I don't know. It's like, I don't know that I've ever been to a museum. I probably hadn't. It's like, not on my priority list. And he's like, he just looked at me. He's like, "You uncultured swine." And I was like, yeah, that's fairly accurate. I am probably a little bit rough around the edges. So we went to museums, and I remember playing a lot of tennis with him. We taught a lot. We were still seeing success. They'd ramped up and had a lot of investigators. I was talking to him about some of the stuff we did to some of the people that were investigating. We'd take some of their bad habits from them without them knowing, and then go burn them without them knowing. Throw them in a shopping cart or a trolley and burn them. And I think he mentioned on there handing out law of chastity pamphlets to people driving around at night. I'm pretty sure I was involved in some of that too. But yeah, they had some awesome investigators there. Yvonne and Julian Brown. There's a lady by the name of Weijia Ray that we were able to teach, and it was kind of weird. Like halfway through that, so it was my last transfer, and I was involved in like 2 transfers in that transfer, because then Elder Johnson was called to. I don't remember if he got called away to go be his own leader somewhere else, and then they sent Elder Money with us. And I don't remember how long we had Elder Money, but I remember that we probably weren't as kind to him as we should have been. Elder Money was, it just depended on his mood, on if he wanted to be a missionary that day or not. And he based his actions on people's reactions to decide which way he would go. He's a good guy. I mean, but it was my last month. I was exhausted and tired, and I remember feeling at the end of my mission, as it started to get closer, I was just tired. And I didn't, I love my mission, but I was ready to go. And I remember the last night when they get your whole group together, and I can't remember where we're at. We had to have been in Edinburgh somewhere. And we were all there, and Elder Hardy was there in our group, because Elder Hardy was in my group. I think it was Elder Hardy, Elder King, Elder Churtco, Elder Peacock. But Elder Hardy and I were sitting there talking, and we're just sitting about what we're going to do when we get home. And I remember him telling me, because I think he came from a construction background as well, and I was a construction background. He's like, "Don't go back to doing the power line construction stuff. It is a rough group of people. It is what it is. The money's good. That's why, you can provide a good living to your family doing that." And he's like, "Don't do it. You're going to get sucked back into your old ways." And here I am 15 years later. I'm not back in my old ways, but I'm still doing power line construction with a rougher group. But I remember just sitting there chatting with him, and we're reminiscing, and yeah, it was nice to be able to sit there. And then I remember coming home and getting to the airport, and I can remember the one thing I remember from getting there, and I don't know if my dad probably does or doesn't anyways, but I remember looking over and seeing him tear it up and crying. And I've never really seen my dad cry much before, and this is just, that makes it worth it. You're able to go and do hard things for 2 years. You had to figure it out for yourself. You couldn't run to mom and dad every time you had a problem, because thousands of miles away. You can't just call them up because it wasn't allowed as much as you wanted to. You really had to learn to develop a relationship with, one, the people that you served with, which built a brotherhood and a sisterhood that you can't get anywhere else. I mean, you two are living proof of this, of what you've done. It's amazing that you have over 100 episodes on this podcast, and I don't know, 50 or 60 missionaries that you've been able to reunite through this thing is nothing. That's miraculous. To be able to have a common ground and to have that core group, you had to develop a relationship with your Savior. You had to get to know him and rely on him. And that made you into the people that made us into the people that we are today, good, bad, or indifferent. But those are things that you had to figure out, and you couldn't do that. And to see just that he was proud of that, because it was something that was unexpected. I know a lot of people, when I went, I remember telling a friend, it was probably a month or so before I was leaving on my mission, the kid I'd hung out with all through high school, was there with one of my best friends. His name's Travis Noble. And we're sitting there. He's like, dude, he's getting ready to go on a mission. He's like, he got his call. He's going to Scotland. And the kid just looked at me. He's like, no, you're not. It's like, I'm being serious, dude. I'm going to be leaving in like 2 weeks. It's like, no, you're not. It's like, shut up. No, you're not. And he left that at the movie theater. I don't think he believed that I was really leaving. It's like completely out in left field that I was going to be going. And it was, it was something that I needed, that I had to do for me. And I don't regret any of it. It was an amazing experience. I was able to meet amazing people and teach some amazing people. And I would love to get back sometime. And I just got to make the time to do it. And I have an inner struggle in my mind that if I go back to my mission, it's going to change how I left my mission. And I kind of like the way I left my mission, but at the same time, I would love to go back and just see some of those people and give them the biggest hugs and not feel like I can't give them a hug, and just tell them how much I love them and I miss them and that they're amazing. And I think I'll start saving up and just making the time to do it. I think it'd be awesome to go back and see them. Probably something I need to do. So, but yeah. But yeah, that's it in a nutshell. Sorry, I got a little teary there. I don't like doing that, but I can't help it.
It's all good.
Yeah, it shows your investment and your love for the experience, the people, like you said. So
yeah,
no worries. You told us to remind you of a story.
Oh yes, with Christian. Yeah, I got one about McLeod too, Garrett McLeod. I'll tell that
yes.
one. So we were. I'll start with this one because it's mission related. And I remember I tried to meet up with him a couple times. I was working up pretty close to where he lives, but we just could never connect the dots and get on the same schedule. I'd love to meet up with him though. But we were at our flat, and Elder Jansen was over there, and Elder McLeod and we were making like snot loogies. And he was chasing Elder Jansen around the apartment because he if he saw it, he would almost vomit. And he would see it, and he would come out of the bathroom, and he'd just look at you, and he'd start dry heaving, and he'd turn and go into the bathroom. And this went on for like 5 or 10 minutes. I think we ended up making him puke. He was so disgusted with us. I think it was around the same time when McLeod was saying he was so stressed out, his eyebrows were falling out. And it was. He had one eyebrow that fell out. So I taped some hair to him, gave it to him. He didn't think it was as funny as we did, but it was funny. But yeah, Christian came and visited me and stayed. I think he stayed with us for 2 or 3 days over the 4th of July one year. And we had jet skis. My sister and her husband, they have a house on the river there in Burley. And the jet skis have a beginner key and a non-restricted key. And Christian's like, "Can I ride the jet ski?" I was like, "Oh yeah, hop on this thing." I was like, "I'll take you for a ride. I'll show you how it's on." Take him out, show him around on there. And when he's not looking, I slip the beginner key on that jet ski for him. I was like, "Yeah, just go to town and go play on that." And he comes back. He's like, "Elder," he's like, "something's wrong with this jet ski." He's like, "It won't go." Because you give that jet ski we had, it's 0 to 60 in like 2 or 3 seconds. You're not holding on, you fall off of it. He can't get it going past 25. He's sitting there trying to figure it out. And finally, I told him, he's like, "You." But yeah, we had a good time with him.
Oh,
I think I probably took him spotlighting and shooting some guns too. I know Elder Joe Tier mentioned that. That was something I used to do a lot of, just redneck stuff. So, it was pretty backwoods.
Love it.
But yeah, and then you two both live in Colorado, right?
Yes. So when you're up running line, come and say hi. We'd love to get together.
Yeah, well, my wife, her family, she's from Colorado Springs.
Oh, nice.
So she makes it back there 2 or 3 times a year. I'm usually every other year. But I think we're gonna try to make it down sometime this year. Go spend a week or so down there. So if, I definitely let you guys know if it comes. It'd be great to catch lunch or something.
You
Be
can
awesome.
you can come meet in my neighborhood because I'm an hour to the Springs and an hour to Jack. So
Perfect.
That'd be awesome.
Right,
It'd be great to
right
catch
in
up.
the middle.
That's right. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Garrett, do you have any specific memories that you'd like to share about your experiences? I mean, you had the uniqueness of being in the office as long as you did with President Sister Vreens or President Sister Frederick beyond what you've already shared.
Mm-hmm. I don't know if you guys remember the Marshes, Elder and Sister Marsh.
I do, yeah.
So I got really close with Elder and Sister Marsh. There was it didn't start out they were just great people anyways. They were like a mom and dad or grandma and grandpa. But we used to alternate Sundays where we would go over to their apartment and cook for them. And then we would go over to their apartment and they would cook for us. And it all stemmed off of because I didn't want to go to a specific dinner appointment that happened every Sunday for missionaries in the Edinburgh ward, because the cleanliness of the apartment and the quality of the food sometimes was very questionable, to the point where I remember when we would get to that dinner appointment, as soon as they left the room, I remember scraping my food onto Elder O'Brien's plate and then holding my plate and giving it to them and saying I was finished so that they couldn't give me any more and he couldn't give it back. And so we would go and cook dinner for them, and the Marshes were amazing. Elder Marsh has since passed, I think a year or two ago. I remember seeing some.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, heartbreaking. They were amazing. They were amazing office couple. They were good. I remember we would come downstairs sometimes after being rowdy because their office was right above ours, and then they would just look at him like, "What are you guys doing up there? It sounds like a herd of elephants running around in that apartment." And I just laugh, and it's like, well, it's just, you got 4 18, 19, 19 and 20-year-olds up there. What do you expect?
It's a tame frat house upstairs.
It was. I remember that the neighbor, the person that lived next to the mission home, I remember we used to open up the window sometimes at night and you could hear them playing music outside, like a guitar or something. It wasn't like a radio or anything. And I remember listening to that. And the mission home was, I loved being in the mission home. I was there for a very short time with President and Sister Vreens, and then President and Sister Frederick coming in, to be able to see that transition and see, like, I remember President Frederick calling missionaries on moves night and just joking with them, telling them their new companion was going to be a girl named Helga if they were a missionary that was going home. And just how excited he was to be there and just to see, and it was a short time I was there, but just to see him fall into that role, because there's really no overlap. It's like one day President and Sister Greens were there, and the next day they're gone, and the Fredericks are there. I think it was only like one day overlap. There's not like a couple week grace period where it's just like they cut the ties and they're gone.
Yeah.
And the mission home was a lot of fun. It was great being there with the missionaries that I got to serve around there. But yeah, that was good.
Love
But
it.
yeah, I feel very spoiled being able to spend that time in the mission home, because you get to see a side of the missionaries. You get to know the office couples very well, and the mission president and his wife, and I think Elder Oaks was there. He did a conference with us, and we went to the conference, and then he did another one just for the missionaries that were serving in Edinburgh. So it was a very personal little one-on-one thing with Elder Oaks in the mission home, and there was only like 15 of us in there, which was amazing. That not everybody it's just something that doesn't happen.
No.
And just very blessed in that aspect of things.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
Love it.
Great. Anybody else you want to shout out who maybe wasn't your companion that you served around? You just want to hear from on the podcast if we can track them down.
I know their names have been said a lot, but Elder Pattenden and Elder McBride. I know I didn't mention him in my podcast. I served around him quite a bit in Edinburgh, though, and I love Elder McBride. I used to go and hang out with him after the mission a lot. I stayed at his house a few times. I would love to hear how he's doing. I actually got his phone number. I reached out to him a few weeks ago. And do I need to get that to you?
Send it.
I will.
He hasn't responded to my invitation to be connected on LinkedIn yet, Marcus. Come on.
I will pass on his phone number, and I won't even feel bad about it.
Yes.
But he had a very unique experience where he was there with Elder Wong and starting the Spanish, or not the Spanish, but the Chinese teaching.
Yeah, that's right.
And but yeah, Elder Pattenden, Stuart Pattenden, I served around him a lot. I think I saw him after the mission as well. He came, we went and stayed at President and Sister Green's one night. Would love to see and hear how he's doing. I haven't talked to him forever. Dan Maddox, I don't know. I served around him. I would love to hear his experience. I remember he was just such a happy missionary just a good guy. And then, yeah, I served with quite a few people that I haven't heard on the podcast. There's Ben Buckner, Canucci, Fisher, Borgelthaw. So O'Brien was on, Snyder, Shenton was on. I don't know if I don't think Ashton's been on, Demeron.
No, but we have been in touch with him.
Oh, good. Tell him he needs to. Joseph Jansen, would love to hear. He was funny.
He's been mentioned a lot recently. I have no idea how to get in touch with him. Unless on that mission list his email is still active by some miracle.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know.
I used to keep in touch with him on social media, but I don't know if he still has it.
I can tell you right now, real quick, Garrett, that we're talking to Ben Buckner next Sunday as we're sitting here.
That's exciting.
So that'll
be
fun.
I'm anxious to hear from him.
Yeah.
We were, like I said, we only served together for 6 weeks, but yeah. Tyler Webb, he lives in Colorado too.
Oh, does he?
Or at least he did. But yeah, English Elder Harrison, he served with Elder Black right before I got there.
Mm-hmm.
Elder Harrison would be another good one. Postak, Van Leuven.
I was messaging with Justin Van Leuven today, and we'll get him. He keeps telling me he needs to get his journals and things out so he can remember all of his stories. But
I'm sure he has some good ones.
I'm continuing to bug him, I promise.
Good. And I had never kept in touch with Elder Postak. But it'd be good to, just curious to see how these guys are all doing, what life's done for them, how it's treating them. Just catch up.
Yeah,
Yeah.
sure.
But yeah,
Great. Good list there. We appreciate you reaching out to the ones you have.
yeah. If you need me to, and just I think I got your phone number. I will send you. I'll send you Marcus's number.
That's right. We texted. I forgot about that. Yes, please do.
Yeah,
Because I will, I will do my soft introduction via text.
It's just
And if he
don't
doesn't,
even do it.
and if he doesn't
Just
answer,
tell
then
him.
I'm gonna call him.
Yeah, I would just start off with the call. Just do the element of surprise.
Oh man,
I need to give him a call too.
Does he still have an 801 area code number? Does he still live in Utah?
I honestly don't know. I lost touch with him for far too long.
Because even though I live in Colorado, I still have an 801 area code on my phone, and so it's easy to sneak up on the Utah people because they're like, "Who the crap is texting me?"
Yes, yeah, mine's still Idaho, and I haven't lived in Idaho since I got home from my mission. So,
that's all.
Yeah, it is still an 801 number.
Yes,
so I would flash it on the screen, but we'll respect some privacy.
Fair enough.
Maybe I should just get everybody on here, 15, 20 people reaching out to him. Feel the love.
He might love us and he might despise us for such an action.
It's very possible. It's a risk I'm willing to take.
Oh man, I love it.
So.
Well, we appreciate it, Garrett. We really thank you for your time this evening. Thanks for everything you've done. As our brother in Scotland, we love you, man.
Oh, yeah, thank you guys too. This is pretty cool. Like I said, it's awesome what you guys are doing. I'll continue listening.
Yeah, we love you, Garrett. Thanks again for like what you said at one point in the podcast was the brotherhood. I mean, we haven't talked in, I don't know, 17, 18, 19 years. I mean, it's been a long time.
Yeah.
It's like riding a bike. It's just right back with our brothers in Scotland, and it's a lot of fun. So thank you for coming on and participating.
Yes. Thanks for the invite.
All right, Garrett. We'll say goodnight to you. Love you, brother.
Yep. Love you guys too. Have a good night.
You too. Cheerio.